All right, here we go. All right, so. Oh, looks like the preview is showing an early thing. All right. There we go. All right. Anyways, okay. So we're up. We're going. We are streaming now. I'll just have to make a note to cut out that intro as we get started. But so today, this week, since I did not have any requests for teaching a particular topic, I don't have an actual lesson prepared this week. Which is kind of nice. It gives me a little bit of a break. But that means we are just going to essentially continue with the whole watch me while I work on this soundtrack type kick we're doing. So hopefully, if you've seen these streams before, you know the drill. This is a soundtrack I was hired to write. At the moment, I'm sketching out my ideas. I'm fleshing them out to get each of them okayed one at a time by the writer and the director. And I'm just kind of carrying you guys along as I go because I don't have time to make edited videos. I can't. I don't have the time to write the scripts, to record the footage, record the audio, edit all of it, and then put it together on YouTube. So I'm just streaming a whole lot. So welcome back, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today, let's see. I've got two pieces that are essentially done. I mean, they're not finished products by any sense of the word, but they're enough to get an idea of what I'm going for. So let's listen to those first, real quick. And then we're going to go on to this third piece, which is the third and final piece I need to write for scene one. So let's give this a quick listen. Alright, so that's piece number one. Like I said, it's not finished, but it's good enough to show the director. It's good enough that he's going to get an idea of what it's going for and whether he can give me the okay. This one's a little tricky because it's a different vibe than what the kind of story may have been calling for. This is kind of the theme that we hear the first time that the main kind of villain of the story is introduced. And he's kind of, to me, I see the villain as a bit like the kind of trickster archetype. Very much a showman, wants to pretend to be your friend, but everybody kind of knows right off the bat, all right, no, this isn't this isn't someone who can be trusted. It's a lot more like a carnival type thing. Oh wow, we're already pretty busy. Okay, Adol, welcome back, Adol. Tamashi trying, thank you. Hello, hi, welcome to this chat, Tamashi. I'm forgetting, is Tamashi, are you also Aditya? I know I had a subscriber who shows up a lot who unfortunately had their account hacked and had to change their settings. If not, sorry about that for the confusion, but welcome back. Cody! Hey, Cody's on! Alright, Cody is one of my dear friends. It's like, what's the inspiration to this piece? It sounds like a ballroom song. Yeah, very similar. So, actually, it's gonna out me as a bit of a weeb. But if anyone saw My Hero Academia, I think it was season 4, one of the themes for Gentle Criminal had very much this kind of fun accordion type ballroom type effect. So it's something a little bit dancey, something that wants to be a little more graceful than it is. And that kind of inspired, was like, I kind of want a similar vibe for the villain in this story. So that's where it came from. Thank you, Tamashi. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoy the music. And Adol, sounds good. It reminds me of some medieval comedy. Pretty much, yes. And that's what I thought. Welcome back, Aditya, or I'll call you Tamashi from now on. I guess just so I don't get confused. But that's piece number 1. Like I said, I'm gonna stop working on it for a little bit until I get okayed. It's inspired by Gentle Criminal. So this next piece is the one that we were working on last Thursday. All right, this one is also at a place where it's not done, but I was able to send it to the writer, and he said he loved it, loved the vibe, and this is very much more of like the kind of beginning of the adventure type piece. This is, like I said, it starts out as a bit of a game, and then this is the real moment where the character is almost like Narnia kind of setting, where I used this example last week, I think, where it was like a historical fiction to start with. And then there's a moment where you just realize, oh, this isn't historical fiction, this is fantasy. And that's kind of the moment in the play that this is going for. So I had a lot of fun putting this one together, but let's listen to this one real quick. There we go. All right, so those are the two pieces that I kind of have put together. Oh, thank you, Cody. Yes, I'm not getting many Ghibli vibes personally, but I do. Thank you. I appreciate it. I love Studio Ghibli music. I take that as a very high praise. Thank you. Let's see here. So, yeah, these are essentially the two pieces I have put together. So the next one is this third little piece where all I have so far is a piano sketch. And so that's what I'm going to be doing today is I'm really going to be focusing on putting this third piece together. Like I said, you guys should know the drill by now if you followed one of these videos. I'm essentially just going to be working on this, alright? So you'll be seeing me figure out things on like a real-time basis. You're going to watch me make decisions, struggle with different issues, figure out how I want to make the arrangements, all that kind of cool stuff. And while we go, you are more than welcome to throw in any questions, any ideas, any comments, etc. Yeah, it's nice for me to be able to work while talking with you guys. It kind of helps me work through things, come up with some ideas. This last piece that I just played, the choir, little fun fact, is actually a whole lot of me and my roommate. All right, just kind of layered. It says A and S. My roommate's name starts with an A. My name starts with an S. And I kind of wrote out some initial harmonies, and we just kind of layered it, added a bit of reverb. I EQ'd it to get rid of all the room tone and all that cool stuff. And so we kind of got this little choir that works better than a sound library would. And so it was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I want to change the harmony a little bit. There are a couple moments where I got to change. So now, once I'm done rewriting the harmony, I have to go through and record all of those parts all over again. The cool part is the writer, the playwright who wrote this, is also an accomplished singer. And so I asked if he would also like to be part of this recording, and he's super excited and said yes. So it's going to be cool. Just kind of have some of like to have just a couple different voices and like people who worked on this kind of enjoying it and being part of the process. Alistair, welcome. How's it going? Let's see here. So I played those parts. Any questions about them, let me know. For now, I'm sure we'll end up listening to them again. I do that a lot, is I end up re-listening to pieces while I'm working on it to kind of get some inspiration or some ideas. Something Technicolor, that's the name of this cue. I'm creating a new folder to just kind of organize this entire thing. I'll do red because this is going to be a bit more of a darker sound. Let's delete that. That was where I recorded the choir. So yeah, let's listen to what I'm going to be working with today. Essentially, my job today is to take this sketch and turn it into a full-on arrangement. So let's listen to it. Should have started a bit sooner. So this one's a lot darker. This is where we're going to see kind of the climax of this particular scene. Alright, where we're going to have our first real encounter with something dangerous. And I have this idea that I love of just like a polyrhythmic texture. So we have the melodic idea going on, but we also have a lot of rhythmic ostinato type ideas going on in the backgrounds as well. And then it's essentially just kind of this idea repeating for quite a while. So my job is going to be able to find ways to take a very rhythmic, very kind of repetitive idea that would be boring on piano. I need to find a way to help it continue to grow, expand, not compete with the dialogue, but still provide a sense of energy and tension to this particular scene. Awesome. People liking my posts on Instagram. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, if you haven't already, go over and follow my page on Instagram. I did a giveaway recently for the new year where I gave away 3 copies of my newest ebook, The Guide to Realistic MIDI Arrangements. Basically, a guide to how to make your libraries for stringed and wind instruments sound significantly more realistic. So that's string, woodwinds, and brass. In the future, I'll probably do updates where I include chapters on percussion, chapter on the piano, etc., etc. And if you purchase a copy now, you will get the updates, all updates in the future for free. Because I don't think it'd be fair to make you guys pay twice for essentially the same book. All right, so here we go. Let's review. All right, the great line something Technicolor. Here we go. All right, so there are 3 big sections to this scene that I need to kind of get. All right, so the first one, the TV turns on, lion appears, Jude tries the door. All right, so that's not going to make any sense to you guys. It makes sense to me. These are hit points in the scene. I, unfortunately, cannot share the script with you guys, so I can't go in depth on what's going on in this scene, but you guys can kind of follow along me in how I break up the music. Alright, so in this particular scene, we are going to... Thank you, Aditya. Or that's now Tamashi now. Thank you. So sonic foreground in this first section is dialogue. In fact, it's dialogue in all of these. It's going to be very important because in a movie, I can kind of move around a little bit and have the music sneak in and out. But when I'm making a soundtrack for a play, not a musical, a play, which is what I'm doing, which is weird, but I love it. The timing is going to be different every night. All right, the delivery is going to be different every single night. The actors will make different decisions every night. I mean, certain things will be narrowed down and nailed in place. But when I'm working with a play and not a movie, I have to understand that there are going to be changes on a night-to-night basis. The first and only other play that I did, which was the same playwright, different director, but same writer, the director, up to literally the last minute, was making changes. I remember being in a bit of a panic less than 24 hours before the play was supposed to be opened for opening night. The director was making changes and saying, I need another minute, I need another 2 minutes, I need another chunk of time for this piece of music you wrote. I remember panicking a little bit. I got it done, but this is the idea that there are such, there are always going to be changes, and I need to make sure that when I write the music, those changes can happen. So all this being a long rant saying, I need to make sure this music at no point could possibly compete with the dialogue or have too strong of a hit point that changes in the timing, changing in the decisions made by the actors and directors would render the music ineffective. All right, so there are essentially 3 different sections. Like I said, the first one's pretty low energy. That's where we're going to have this initial opening where it's just kind of chords. Then a motivic statement. And then we start building. And again, this is a strategy I really enjoy for especially this particular product. It's called incremental complexity. All right, that's when you start your music, the introduction to your music is just adding one layer at a time. All right, so here we have like these initial moments. So I've got the bass line. Oops, my piano is not playing. Why is my piano? There we go. So we've got, I gotta change the octave. We've got this initial sound where we have the chords and only the chords. And then we add a bit of a moving bass line. And then we have kind of one layer at a time gets added. And that helps transition us from silence to music, which is very tricky, especially in a live setting. The audience does have a tendency to just accept it when something new is added. So there are going to be very rare cases where the actors are just talking, and then the music starts, and they're going to go, wait, where did that music come from? No, the audiences tend to just accept the fact that there's going to be music, which is very helpful and very good for us as the composers. But I still like to have a little bit of a transition, something that kind of eases us into that transition. Thank you. Thank you, Cody. Does this mean that you have to write keeping in mind that someone is going to have to play this? How does that change your writing process? That's a really good question. So, yes and no. A lot of this is just going to be played by computer, all right? In which case, I have a moment, actually, over here in Enter Game Maker. All right, so if we look at the piano part, so over here, originally I had this bottom part in octaves. So if we solo the piano, I originally had this bass line in octaves, which I liked because it had a lot more power in it. But when it was in octaves, it made this transition here a little clunky. Having to go from an octave in the low hand all the way, and again, why did it stop playing the piano? Here we go. Where did it go? There we are. So it was this awkward little jump from going down here with this low C in octaves, and then having to jump all the way up here to this minor chord. And it's just an awkward movement in the left hand. And the piano, I do anticipate hiring a real studio musician to perform. And so that requires playability. And it requires that I make certain changes, keeping in mind that this will not be awkward, that it won't cause issues based on the skill level of the piano player. However, parts like this, the accordion, I do not need to worry about this. So I have two parts for the accordion, especially over here. And that's muted. This part is not going to be played by a real musician. This part, it's not even a sound library. It's a synthesizer. I did not make this one. This one is a preset. It's just made to sound like an accordion. I liked the sound of it, so I went with it. So this one, I can do whatever kind of crazy stuff I want to. Because the play has a limited budget, so there's not going to be live musicians. But if I want to hire studio musicians, which I do, I want to hire a double bass player who is comfortable playing in the melodic register above middle C, and a piano player. The bass part and the piano part need to be playable because I want them to be played. I want them to be recorded. All other parts, I can do whatever I want with. It doesn't need to be realistic. You guys may have seen on Instagram or TikTok or whatever social media you're on, the show Wednesday, based off the Addams Family. It's been kind of popular pointing out that certain parts are not possible to perform on a single cello. The character Wednesday is seen playing a cello piece, and whatever she's playing is not physically possible by a solo cello player. But the magic of movies and soundtracks is you don't need it to be possible. Because you can either do that by just having two players perform the single part and alternate to make it sound realistic, or you can just use a computer to do it. So it depends on what you're going for. So yeah, I hope that answers. That's kind of like a long roundabout answer to say that no, this will not be performed live, but yes, I will have studio musicians recording parts of it. In which case, the parts being recorded need to be playable, and I need to keep that in mind as I write them. Whereas the other parts that will just be played by Cubase don't need to be. Alistair, what cello VST do you use? Are strings unusual? Good question. So I will usually... So for the bass, like I said, this entire piece is written for the bass. Unfortunately, I only have one solo bass library, the Spitfire Solo Strings, which for the most part is great, but it's not meant to be played in the melodic register. So it stops at this F sharp 3, which is the F sharp just below middle C. And so, unfortunately, it's not very useful for a lot of the parts I've written, especially in The Great Lion, this part over here. This part I had to put on the solo cello library. Thank you, Jose. Alright, so that one, I use the Spitfire Solo Strings. I'm using the cello, the lower end of the cello, or middle end, I should say, as a bass. Just because I don't have a bass library. But in general, the library I'll use for my strings are going to be, like as sections, are Spitfire Studio Strings Professional. This is my favorite library that I work with. It has its issues. It's a very dry library, so if you don't like dry strings, meaning strings that don't have a lot of reverb or room to them, but I like to do it because I can add my own reverb, and I love the sound that they have, and most importantly, I love the level of control that this library gives me. I also have Albion 1, which is the first library I ever purchased and I worked with, but it's beautiful sound. I still love Albion, but I don't use it all that often because you'll notice it doesn't separate into the individual instruments. It uses what you call an ensemble patch. So you have strings, you have mid brass, low brass, high brass. because I've spent a lot of time studying and strengthening my orchestration skill set, I like to have control over the individual instruments, which this library and my other studio professional libraries give me. So I can have control over not just the first violins, but what if I want a smaller section? What if I want to do divisi? Then with like the woodwinds, they give me all the individual patches. So I love all of this. I like having that control. Cody, glad to help. Let's see here. So, where were we? Oh yeah, we were working on this piece and arranging it. All right, so where are my notes? All right, so this first one is bass line and accompaniment. Approximately 15 seconds. Ooh, this one's gonna be fun. So this one I've got to start planning out. So this first initial piece. All right, so we've got that first section where it's just the bass line and accompaniment. Then after that we have polyrhythmic. So and there are polyrhythmic. If you haven't watched my playlist on, actually no, I haven't done a video on the polyrhythmic texture yet. Polyrhythmic is essentially, it's what you call a soundscape texture. Meaning it's not meant to present a single melodic idea, although I am technically doing that at this point. Instead, the idea is to create a more overall ambience, an overall mood. So a common example is the polyphonic texture, or strict counterpoint. You don't have a primary melody, you have multiple melodies layered on top of each other. So none of them really stick out, but they create this mood, this ambience. A polyrhythmic, as the name implies, is the much more rhythmic alternative. It's essentially a whole lot of ostinati layered on top of each other. An ostinato, plural is ostinati. An ostinato is essentially a repeating rhythmic idea. So you have a bunch of rhythmic layers layered on top of each other. Those layers can have pitch added to them. Like we had this trill going on here, E to G. And I have the cello highlighted. But the E to G, that's technically a rhythmic idea. It's a strict rhythm, it's a boring rhythm, but the interval gives us a little bit more personality. Another example being this idea up here. And so we've got all these different layers. We've got this top layer here going on. In fact, we'll listen one more time as we kind of listen to all of them added. The first ones we have just the bass line and the essential notes of the chord. Essential notes, bass line, pulsing bass line. Chords, pulsing bass line, trill / ostinato. And then a true ostinato up here. Then the melody enters. Welcome, Matt. Welcome back. Another one of the usuals. Any modal mixture to play? Let's see here. A minor to E minor? Not really. This piece is pretty stable so far. I mean, I'm going to change it quite a bit because I got to write more of it. But this piece stays pretty much just that one chord relationship. E minor to A minor. Although I guess it's technically E minor to A minor inverted. Which builds a lot of tension in the sound. You can hear the difference between those two. So E minor being, and then to A minor. That has one sound. If we go E minor to an A minor second inversion, which means that A is no longer the bass line, we're going to an E in the bass line, we have this nice tense sound. Especially if we keep continuing. And at this point, I'm just procrastinating. All right, this is a genuine problem I have with putting arrangements together. Because if you've been on here this entire time, we've been here 30 minutes. This was supposed to be what I'm supposed to be working on. And I'm just kind of explaining how I wrote it and not actually arranging it. That's okay. This is technically the only other piece I want to make sure I finish this week. So I've got time. And, yeah. Mohammed, is Omnisphere good for film scoring? If not, what is the essential library or plugin for film scoring you recommend? Omnisphere, I'm not too familiar with Omnisphere, unfortunately. I don't know Omnisphere, so I can't give judgment on it. What I will say is that the absolute best sound library you can possibly have for film scoring is the one that you know the best. All right, and that sounds like a cop-out. All right, it really does. But let me explain why. All right, so the better you understand your sound library. For example, I happen to understand each of my Studio Pro libraries quite well. I understand the sound, I understand the articulations, I understand, most importantly, all of the MIDI controls. So I understand how the vibrato works, how modulation impacts the sound, and how I can use all of the different... So, for example, let's actually pull one up, shall we? Oh, sorry, I have an alarm going off. That's all right. Let's pull this over here. So I understand how to get the most emotional, expressive performance out of these libraries than any other library I own. I happen to also own a few of the Metropolis ARC libraries. I love their sound. I have the same issue with them that I have with Albion 1, where it's more of an ensemble approach, and just personally, I love to have a little more control of the individual instruments. But if you have Omnisphere, if you own a library, before you go on trying to find out if there are any better options, spend as much time as you possibly can mastering that library. You need to read the manual. I've read the manual for each of these libraries 5 times each. Because I'll read them, I'll absorb everything, then I'll come back and I'll forget stuff I haven't used in a while, so I'll go back and I'll reread it, and I'll read oh, that's so cool, I didn't know the library could do that. You need to understand everything that your libraries can do. You need to understand how to use your tools. Because there are lots of people out there with very powerful tools, but they just don't know how to use them. It's like having a power drill. All right, you can have the fanciest power drill in the world, but if you don't know how to keep the screw going in straight, if you don't know how to bore a guideline into the wall first, then it doesn't matter. You're still going to do a bad job putting whatever you're trying to do together. On the contrast, if you have someone who has a cheap... 1337 Christopher, thank you, liked the photo. They were one of the winners this past week of one of my ebooks. So again, follow me on Instagram if you enjoy free giveaways and cool posts and whatnot. But the analogy I was doing, all right? So yeah, if you have a master carpenter with a cheap power drill, they're going to be able to put together much cooler stuff than a complete novice with the most top-of-the-line, thousands of dollars power drill, all right? It's just because they don't know how to use it. I don't know if this works as a metaphor. I'm certainly not a carpenter. I'm not a handy person or a handyman of any sort. But all this to say, I understand my libraries. I understand that I've got my modulation, my vibrato, my reverb, and expression. I know how to use these. I know to go into here and how to get the configuration I want for my mics. Usually, it'll be both tree mics, an ambient mic, and then 1 or 2 close mics brought real low if I just need these to stick out a bit more. This is the mix that I like because I know this library. If you don't understand how the different microphones work and what kind of impact they have and how you can use them, I have a blog post on my website about setting up the rooms for your MIDI. Essentially, each of these mics are put in a different distance from the instruments, and so they have a different impact on the quality of the sound you want. Lots of people think since the close mic is the closest to the instrument, that's the one you want to work with. That could not be furthest from the truth. You almost never want to use a close mic unless you really want to. Because it picks up a lot of unnatural tendencies. All right, if you're in a symphony hall, you're not going to hear the scraping of the bow on a cello's strings, not clearly because you're so far away. If you have a close mic, you're going to hear all those sounds, and so it sounds a little uncanny or unrealistic depending on the sound effect you're looking for. So if you want to learn more about mic positions, check out the new blog post. It's also, the blog post is the first chapter taken from my newest ebook, which is again about making the most realistic mock-ups possible. But I also understand how to use each of these different line of little tools they have here. I understand when I want to increase the tightness or decrease the tightness. Versus, like, that's typically if I'm playing the part in versus bringing it back. If you'll notice with the tightness, if this is all the way down, well, you're probably not going to notice because you can't see when I'm pressing the note on my keyboard. But if you were to see, you'd notice that there's a slight time lag depending on the setting I have. Same with the release. Vibrato is going to have an effect. If my computer can play it. My computer can't play it for some reason. It's falling in and out. But I know the settings that I want to do for how sensitive I'd like this. I like to have it typically to about 6 decibels. Infinity to 6. And that impacts my CC7 controller and stuff. All of this has just been a really long rant to say there's no particular library that's better than the others, which technically there are. There are some libraries that are just newer, they're better designed, they have higher quality. But that is not going to have as big as of an impact as how effective you are at using it. I mean, there are several movie soundtracks that you can hear from the early 2000s, late 90s, that use what we would call dated and terrible synth instruments. But they still sound amazing because the music editors and the composers who use them had mastered those instruments, had mastered those computer libraries, and could make them sound as realistic as possible. So that's kind of my soapbox. I will step off now. Thank you, Mohammed. That gave me a chance to kind of avoid working. Because, I don't know. I'm not feeling like working on this at the moment, which I really need to. And this is going to be a very important piece in the play. It's the first time we see real conflict. It's the first time that the danger, like the antagonist, actually reveals itself. And there are even moments. This is one of the few pieces of music that was written into the script. All right, meaning that when I'm reading through the script, the writer, the playwright, actually had this script in this, describing the music, describing what's happening, where the hit points are, and stuff. And so I have to make sure I deliver because it's one of the few pieces of music that the writer was actually imagining as they wrote the play. Let's see here. Mohammed, let's see. Entropy Addict, do you think that learning from game MIDI can be effective for learning orchestration if you can't read music? What's game MIDI? Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with game MIDI. Do you mean like studying like game music? In which case, yeah, studying any kind of music you want to write is awesome. If game MIDI is a software or a channel or something, unfortunately, I don't know. If you can describe what game MIDI is, I'd be happy to give a little bit more of an opinion. Matt Lewis, sounds great. Thank you, Matt. Yusuf, Omnisphere is a synth VST. I would actually love to hear an orchestra from Omnisphere sound. Ooh, awesome. So apparently that was a very unnecessary rant. But you still found it helpful anyways, Mohammed. Thank you. You're very gracious. I appreciate it. Omnisphere, I've heard amazing things about Omnisphere. Lots of people will say certain synths are outdated. For example, in the Great Lion, I have three synths sounds going on. All right, first I have this ringing sound that I made, and then I have this bass sound that I made, and then there's some chimes that are gonna come in. They double the piano. And of course, these aren't the only things happening. All that's going on. So, sorry. I kind of got lost for a moment. But the idea is all of these synths, and probably more, were made on Massive. All right, Massive, if you look anywhere online, you're going to find a whole lot of people saying Massive is old, Massive is outdated. Maybe it is, but this is the one I know how to use the best, all right? I'm working on learning others, but this is just the one synth that I studied, that I learned. I am by no means a master synthesizer. Very, very new, in fact. But this is the one I studied. This is the one I learned. And so, working with a tool I understand is going to be able to create much better sounds for my pieces than trying to learn something brand new that I just can't make the most of, just because someone online told me that it was more cutting edge, or that this one was outdated. And you're going to see that a lot. There are all kinds of opinions, especially Reddit. When I first started this channel, I was on Reddit quite a bit, especially when I first started my journey as a composer. I was on Reddit all the time asking for feedback, looking up articles. I got some great information on there. I appreciated the people who did, but the problem I found with Reddit is everyone has an opinion. And you don't really have a way of understanding where that opinion comes from. So the person telling you that a synth is out of date could very well be someone who only uses presets, and that's why they think it's out of date, because they're sick of using just the same sounds over and over again. They want a new synthesizer with new presets. If you have someone with a sound library, that could again be someone who doesn't understand how to orchestrate, and they still say that your sound library is worse because that's one that they bought years ago, but they couldn't make it sound good because they never bothered to learn it. And ultimately, that's something where I had to get off of Reddit. I rarely ever go on Reddit anymore, just because there was so many dogmatically opinionated people. Wonderful people, too. But there were so many people who were out there and determined to say, no, you have the wrong synthesizer, or you have the wrong DAW, or you have the wrong keyboard, or the wrong understanding of theory, or whatever it was. Wrong kind of thing. And all of that, like I said, my philosophy really is whatever strategy you understand the best is going to be the one that works best for you. Because something I'm definitely learning on this project is, like I said, going into this particular soundtrack, I did not know how to make my own sounds on a synthesizer. So when the playwright told me, I want this to be a hybrid score, I want synthesizers and traditional orchestral instruments. Of course, I'm like, I want the job, so yes, I'll do it. And now I had this super anxious kind of experience, lots of anxiety of realizing I'm out of my depth for a little bit. All right, I realized that there are so many moments where I thought, if this could just be an orchestra soundtrack, I'd be done by now. All right, I have a much, much stronger understanding of the orchestra than I do with synthesizers. I mean, now I'm grateful because now I have a much better understanding of synthesizers and I've really enjoyed the process. But where am I going with this? It's just been an added struggle for me to have to not only write professional level music, but to do it as a beginner. As I have my understanding of music theory, I have my understanding of orchestration, but when it comes to creating the sounds, I am a complete beginner. Not anymore. Now I'd say I'm more like an early intermediate kind of level, but I'm still nowhere near the level I am in other areas of music composition. So all of this to say that you always want to play to your strength. Be aware of what your weaknesses are and work on them, but always play to your strengths. If you have an outdated synthesizer that came out 20 years ago, well, at that point, it's just retro, all right? Go for it, use it anyways. Everyone will say, that's so cool that you still use this, or that you thought of going back and using this kind of thing. You don't have to tell them that you've still been using it. Whatever kind of approach, whatever technology, doesn't matter how outdated it is, if you know it, and you can make it sound better than the latest technology in an amateur's hands, then go for it. Stick to it. There are always chances to kind of develop and grow and learn new things, but never feel ashamed or pressured to move away from old tech just because it's old, if that makes sense. Only ever move away from something because it doesn't serve you anymore, because it no longer fills the roles that you need it to. Awesome. All right, so getting a lot of stuff. Sorry, I can get on a soapbox a little bit. I love to hear myself talk, all right? I've always known that, so if that was a bit of a rant, I apologize. I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned something. I hope it's inspiring of some sort. But let's see here. So that's my thoughts on synths. Muhammad, this is very helpful. Wonderful. SMZ, hello there. I don't comment too often, but I love your stuff. Happy to catch you live. Thank you, SMZ. I really appreciate it. It's glad to have you on the live stream. I appreciate all of you guys who show up too, and I really appreciate leaving the comments. I know that can take courage at times, seeing your name go up there. It really, really does help though. Part of YouTube's algorithm, two big things that you can do or three things. One, if you share my links with other people, if you send them in messages, if you send them in emails, or you share them on forums or Reddit pages or whatever, if you have your favorite video of mine and you share it somewhere, that does wonderful things for the algorithm. YouTube likes to look at, they like to say, oh, this video is being referenced in multiple places. That means it must be authoritative. That means it must be trustworthy. Let's start sharing it to more people. All right, so that's one thing you can do. Number two is the more time you watch in a video, again, the better performance it is for me. Because another huge thing YouTube looks at is what percentage of your videos are people watching. Are people clicking onto your video, spending 5 seconds watching it and then leaving? If so, they're going to stop recommending the video. Or are people clicking on the video, watching the whole video, and then maybe even continuing to another video on my channel? In which case, that looks fantastic to YouTube. And the third one is commenting. All right, commenting and interacting, liking it, talking, all that kind of really cool stuff really helps the channel grow because, again, YouTube is seeing people like this. So yeah, those are three huge things you can do to help the channel grow. Thank you so much if you help out. If you don't, no worries. I'm glad you're here anyways. I've been doing a lot of homework on SEOs and trying to channel growth and I've got some big plans for the channel and the blog on my website. Like I said, if you haven't heard already, this new year, after this play is done, so it probably won't be done until April, is when I'll be done with this soundtrack and good, it's over with. That's when I'm going to start having more time to start putting out specific videos. And when I do, the edited videos for YouTube are going to start I'm going to finish the orchestration series first. I got 2 or 3 more videos in that series. But after that, I'm going to start focusing more on the intersection of emotions in music. So I am an MSW, so I have a master's in social work is what that means. I was trained to be a therapist. I am supposed to be a therapist, but then I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be a musician, and my parents were thrilled, as you can imagine. But they're very supportive now. But there were a lot of people in my life like, what are you doing? That's too much information. Just keep on the topic. Sorry, I'm talking to myself. But all I have to say is I do love the topics of psychology, mental health therapy, all these really cool things that I spent 6 years of my life studying, and that for a while I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life dedicated to. So I am very passionate to the field of psychology in general. In fact, little known fun fact, I was supposed to continue after my master's into a joint PhD program. I was supposed to be earning my PhD in both social work and social psychology. But fortunately, before that started, I realized it was not for me, and I kind of moved away from the program. But so I've got, but I still love psychology, all right? And so I get lots of questions about emotions and music, which is a very exciting field in psych. The idea of how are emotions processed, how are emotions experienced through other stimuli, like music. And there are all kinds of theories, all kinds of models that kind of explain this. And so that's kind of what I'm going to be focusing on in the new year, is talking about not only these different theories and how music can portray emotions, but specific ideas and strategies for how to do it. So, for example, on Instagram, someone asked me recently, how do you make tragic music? All right, the question was, I know how to make sad music, but whenever I try to make it tragic, there's just, for some reason, it doesn't work. It just sounds sad. It doesn't sound big and huge and epic. And the reason behind that is because tragic and sad are two different emotions. They're both negative and they're both closely related. But sadness, and you could even say grief if you wanted to, has a lower energy level. So if you have lower music, that is the synth, not the piano. Sorry about that. Let's go to the piano. So if you've got kind of sad music, if Cubase will play. That sounded a bit darker. Yeah, like the nice kind of quiet minor harmonies, you can create a very sad sound very simply. But when you want to make it tragic, tragic is a much larger, higher energy experience. Tragedy has the same kind of negative and sad qualities, but it is experienced on a much larger and grander scale. So if you want to take sad music and turn it into tragic music, you need to mimic that shift in energy. So it's going to be very difficult to do it on a piano, especially since I'm not a piano player. But if we take that same similar chord progression, so A minor, E minor, and then A F major, then A minor, we had just kind of a simple, kind of low energy. This is kind of a sad, ruminating kind of feel. If we add a little bit more energy, it starts to become a little more tragic. Alright, and I'm just kind of improvising, but you can see how those had different emotional feels. They were both the same exact chord progression, but one had more energy. Therefore, it was a little larger. It was more tragic. And if we were to do that in like an arrangement, this initial one would work very well with intimate strings. And then if I can play the right chords. Very kind of intimate strings. You can think of like a string adagio going on. Whereas you can kind of imagine this other one is having a lot more brass. And like the... kind of like the same exact chord progression, just a larger scale. And so... I'm sorry, I'm starting to get off tangent because now I just, you can see how much I get excited about this concept, about the idea of music and energy. And so, according to kind of this model of viewing emotions, the idea is it's not enough to think about how the emotional expression of like negativity versus positivity is at play, but you also have to keep in mind the energy level. And then you have to consider like, well, how is that energy being experienced? Is it outward? Is it an inward expression? What's kind of going on? There's all kinds of aspects of an emotion you can kind of consider and then think of the musical equivalent of it. So I hope that was interesting to you as much as it is for me. Let's see, questions. Let's see here, because I am kind of... let's see here. Oh, wow, here we go. So there are a lot of comments here. So MSMZ, thank you. That was the last one. Entropy Addict. I mean, like MIDI from a track in a game. Oh, definitely. Yep. You do not need to learn how to read music in order to write. It helps. I will say this. If you can learn, go for it. Knowing how to read music is tremendously helpful. But, no, yeah, if all you have, work with the tools you have. All right? There are countless examples of tremendously talented and prolific composers who just never learned how to write music. It's not a requirement. It's a tool. It's like the question is, can you still write poetry without knowing how to read or write? Of course you can. All right? Knowing how to write down your poems can be very helpful, but as long as you understand the language you speak, you can still make poetry, kind of thing. So, yes, if you can learn how to write music or read and write music, go for it. That's very helpful. If not, it's not necessary. You can always study MIDI files, especially if you have them. If you have access to them, that is one of the best things you can do because you can dissect it. You can see how different choices were made, all that cool stuff. And, of course, my channel has a lot of videos that can help with that. So, yeah, hopefully that helps. Entropy Addict, I found a website with a bunch of Final Fantasy full MIDI scores. Oh, perfect. Yes, that is an incredible... In fact, share that, if you will. Send it in, put it in the comments or send it to me. Either of those, I would love to look at those. Because, yeah, if you can get MIDI files like that, that is a tremendously useful tool for learning. Honestly, you can also just learn by listening. So if you watch any of my Learn by Listening videos, it was a short-lived series. Wasn't very popular. I really enjoyed it. but it wasn't very popular. It wasn't getting many responses, so I kind of moved on from it. But you can also learn a lot about orchestration and arranging by just listening to music. Listen to it deliberately. And the big ones you want to ask are, what layers are being used? So can you hear melody? You can hear counter melody. You can hear the chords, the bass line, rhythm, all that kind of stuff. What layers do you hear? And then what instruments are being used to play them? Once you kind of have that description, go through and just kind of take some notes. Like, so this melody is in the cello. It's in the upper range of the cello, it sounds like. And kind of describe the kind of feelings you get from it. One of the best ways to learn how to write music is to listen to music, essentially. In fact, lots of composers become composers because they listen to so much music. And it kind of gets ingrained in them. It's called having an instinct for the musical gesture is what it's called. A very kind of weird academic way of explaining that you just have an intuitive idea of how music should sound. And lots of people have that to a certain level just because we listen to so much music. So we know that when you have this chord, because we've listened to so much music, we know that it really wants to resolve to. You don't need to know that that's a authentic cadence is what that's called. You don't need to know that specific term. All you know is that sound is very satisfying, essentially. So yeah, go for it. Those are going to be a tremendously useful resource for you. Entropy Addict, I hope that answers your question. Ravi, welcome, hi. Frank Williams, Massive X is also great. Yes, I have Massive X. That one got a lot of flack when it came out. Of course, that everything that comes out gets a lot of flack on Reddit. Because people have expectations and it doesn't work out. I actually wanted to use Massive X. I have it, actually. I wanted to use it for this soundtrack. Unfortunately, I just don't understand Massive X the same way that I understand Massive. I have an idea how to use it. It's just not as fluent, and Massive is by no means fluent to me. But I have a better understanding of Massive than I do Massive X, so that's why I did it. But I am going to try and do a lot more work mastering Massive X, because I really like the idea. Another good synth that I really want that I shouldn't be buying because I don't have any money is Zebra. But Hans Zimmer uses it, and I mean that's why I got Cubase. When I first started, I just Googled what's a DAW. I had no idea what a DAW was, and I thought, all right, well, I don't know which one's the good one. Which one does Hans Zimmer use? Cubase. That's the one I'm getting. All right, sorry, that snap was louder than it needed to be. But so yeah, and so when I found out that Hans Zimmer uses Zebra, I was like, oh, I want that. And then when I saw the demonstrations online, I was like, this just the flow, the design makes sense to me. The way it's put together just seems to make sense. It's intuitive, so I really want it. Unfortunately, I am a starving artist. I am a broke musician. I have at times less than a penny to my name, so I unfortunately cannot afford any more technology. But someday, right? We're all gonna make it someday, right? Let's see here. And I'm falling behind on comments. Wow, you guys are being very active today. Thank you. Let's see here. I love Faceplant and Serum 2. Yes, I've heard great things about things. There's so many synths out there that I want. SMZ, if you ever want to lose yourself in a synth, I highly recommend Faceplant. Intuitive UI, and it does everything. All right, I'm writing this down. All right. Always keep a pen and pencil nearby. Let's see here. So it is Faceplant. And then, Ravi, you mentioned... oh, yeah, Ravi, you also mentioned Faceplant. And Serum as well. I've heard of Serum. I like Serum. I kind of did a couple classes based on Serum, but I never bought it. I'd be interested, but Faceplant sounds interesting. I've never heard of it. What do you think about Splice AI and sampling? I unfortunately don't know anything about Splice. I don't know much about like what you're talking about AI and sampling either, Aditya, or Tamashi, I should say. Unfortunately, I'm not really plugged in. I do know I am a bit weary of AI, simply just because everybody thinks it's going to replace the artist. It's not. Computers are capable of tremendously incredible things, but they, as of yet, are incapable of true expression. Alright, a computer cannot come up with a completely new, novel idea based on the computer's own experiences. They can imitate that, but the true heart and soul of music is going to always come from a human, I should hope. But again, I'm not much of a computer person. I don't know what I'm talking about. I just have my uninformed opinion, which I'm happy to share with anyone who would like. Tamashii, my parents were thrilled to. Yes. I have like I said, my parents are very supportive now. All right, and it's a lot because of you guys. All right, it's a lot because my parents, my mom in particular, when she started seeing comments on the channel from people, from all of you, saying how much you really appreciate the videos, how much you really appreciate the work, and how much I'm able to help you. My mom was like, all right, this seems like you're calling. All right, we support you. We're behind you. Just please make money if you can. So my parents are very supportive of it. I remember early on there was a very long conversation I had with my dad that went till like 3 a.m. He's like, I just don't understand this. He's like, you were going to be a doctor. What happened? What changed this? And I mean, there's a lot of personal reasons behind it. I felt like wanting to be a doctor was always me running away from what I really wanted to do. And my whole career plan had been focused around the idea of, well, I want to be able to have money and time for my hobbies, for music. It was always like, I want to have time for music. And after a while, I just realized that like the work was so difficult and so demanding. I mean, especially as a therapist. My friend is a trauma therapist. And the stories I heard in grad school were enough to just ruin my week. Like, you hear the things that people go through in their life, and I couldn't brush it off. It stuck to me. My friend is great at just kind of moving on, going like, look, he helps, he does tremendous work, but when the work is done, it's done. He goes home and he doesn't carry any of it with him. And I just couldn't do that. So after a while, I realized this is going to kill me. I can't do this for the rest of my life. The only other thing that I could do is what I felt I really want to do with the music. And again, this is oversharing. I apologize. I tend to just kind of get on a rant and go. But yes, all of that to say, my parents are on board, but there was definitely a moment in time where everyone was confused as to why I seemingly abandoned the path towards prosperity. And it's certainly not as prosperous of a career. Like I said, I barely get by from paycheck to paycheck, but I am very, very happy doing what I do. And that was just something I had to realize, that, money isn't always, it's not the source of happiness. And I find fulfillment in what I do. I find fulfillment in helping all of you. And so for me, I'm happy with that, right? I'm fine with that. Someday I would like to make lots of money, and I'm working on it. But for now, I'm happy. I'm content, and I feel fulfilled. So thank you. Diversian, feel you. Studied physics and mathematics before switching to music. Emotions and music is something I'd be interested in. Awesome. Welcome. Thank you. Awesome. So yes, a fellow science person changing career paths, right? It's always fun, isn't it? But I'm weary of going down another oversharing rant. So, and you're from Germany. Thank you. Wow, that's really cool. Someone from the other side of the world. My family, my last name. So I'm biracial. My mom's family is from Mexico, and then my dad's family was in America for a couple of years. My grandfather on my dad's side was German, and he fought for America during World War II. In fact, he was at Pearl Harbor when it was attacked during World War II. But we've still got very strong ties with the family in Germany. And so I've got an uncle and cousins who speak German. I unfortunately do not. And they apparently visit. And I've also got family in Poland, because my grandmother was from Poland, and I'm kind of oversharing again. But yeah, so awesome. I'll just say that I have distant connections in Germany, and I always, I've got a nice, strong German name, Steven Berkmeyer. So yeah, it's a very German name, which with the long black hair and the darker skin, often kind of throws people off a little bit. But yeah, let's see. Cool. So oversharing. The theme of today is oversharing and ranting. I don't know if you noticed. We kind of fell away from music. But I'm having fun. I'm having a good time. That's fine. I hope you are too. SMC, I work part-time in an end-of-life care clinic as a mental health assistant and trying to pursue music right now. That is tough work, my friend. For the last 3 years of her life, my abuelita had dementia, and we didn't want to put her in a nursing home, and so we just took turns. We took shifts taking care of her. So my days were always Sundays. Every Sunday, I would go over there in the early afternoon, and I would spend the day with her, watching her, taking care of her. So that's definitely That's difficult work. But tremendously important. So I commend you, SMC, and keep pursuing music. I remember there were times where I would just play guitar for my abuelita, or I would be there reading a book on orchestration. One of our favorite things to do, it was watch movies. I'd bring over movies with huge soundtracks and cool special effects, because her memory was gone at that point. She couldn't follow a story, but she loved the spectacle. All right, whatever times she could plug in, she'd notice. She could tell who the bad guys were because they were always the ugly ones. She always had, as she would put it, and then there was like the music and like the special effects. She loved it. So those are some of my fondest memories with her. Thank you, SMC. You kind of put me down memory lane. I appreciate that. Ravi, I'm a full-time chef and make EDM in free time. I love to learn cinematic songwriting stuff. That's awesome. I had an older lady tell me on the street that I looked like a chef. I have no idea what that means, but she was a nice lady. We kind of just chatted in passing. But that's awesome. I fancy myself. I like to cook, but this is really cool. I like finding out more about you guys' backgrounds and where different parts of life you are. I love what the running theme is, that we all just have a passion for music and we all make time for it, which is really cool. Matt, a minor chord with an added 9 sounds very sad. All right, so I feel like I've gotten very far behind on these comments. But yes. Again, that's the synth, not the piano. When am I going to learn my lesson? Yes, a minor 7th with a 9th. It has a lot of tension in it. So if we go up even higher... It's a fun kind of... I love harmony. Especially extensions. Chord extensions are really fun to work with. But that is a very cool thing. That's called an appoggiatura, I believe, which is a non-chordal tone being emphasized over a chord. And in this case, like the 9th over A minor, being that B. Alright, it doesn't belong to the chord, but when it's in the melody, it sounds very emotional. If it's in the chord, it can sound very dissonant. If it's part of a 7th chord and a 9th, it can be very cool. All kinds of really cool stuff you can play with. But that's one of the fastest ways to create kind of nostalgic, ambiguous, and emotionally sad melodies, is to use notes from outside of the harmony. All right, let's catch up with this real quick. And another great synth is Iris 2 and iZotope. I am a fan of iZotope's plugins. It's not supported anymore, but I think some places will sell it sometimes for as little as a couple bucks, but I haven't checked in a while. That would be cool. I'm going to write that down too. Thank you for the recommendation, because I do like iZotope. iZotope does great plugins. I use them mostly for like their fixing kind of stuff, so like removing room noise from audio recordings. So one of them, actually, if you look back at where is it? The Great Lion. Yes, we'll start back here. These choir, you'll notice I have iZotope RX7 voice denoise, which when the choir comes in, you will see how it kind of gets rid of some of the background noise. See it working here. All of these certain frequencies getting EQ'd out. So essentially what it does, if we just kind of solo this one voice, which you're going to hear all the imperfections in my roommate and I singing this line, but it's just the two of us. It sounds a lot derpier when it's just the two of us, because I'm technically a trained singer, but I haven't had training in years, and I haven't kept with it, but neither of us are currently trained singers, and we just kind of did this because the imperfections actually work really well for the sound we're going for. But that's right, I was going to bring this up so that you can listen to it first, the line with it, and then if we remove that, turn that off. So I turn it off so it's not going to have the effect. It's subtle, but you can hear kind of room tone in the background. It's subtle, and with so many different layers on top of each other, having that room tone get multiplied can really muddy up the sound. So that's what I like to use my iZotope plugins for. There's a whole bunch of them that I'd like to get. And I'm just realizing I said I was going to catch up on the comments, and here I have spent 5 minutes talking on this one. But Iris 2, thank you, Entropy. Iris 2, I'm going to check all these out, because I do love iZotope's products. It's a sample-based synth, which is very interesting. Yes, I do want to learn a lot more about working with sample-based synths, especially Kontakt. I want to use Kontakt as a synthesizer. Let's see, SMZ, if you're interested in Faceplant, it's 50% off on VST Bus for a few more days, 99 USD instead of 190. That is awesome. Unfortunately, I don't have the budget for it. I am very interested, so I'll have to wait in the future when I've got a bit more of a budget. But yes, thank you, SMC. Helios, wait, my name is Steven. Wonderful, awesome. There we go. A couple of Stevens in the chat, right? Although mine is spelled with a PH, not a V. But still, cool. 2 Stevens. It's a good name, isn't it, Helios? If you're still on the stream, I don't know if you are. You probably posted this about like 15 minutes ago. I'm sorry. Adol, a shrink composer. That's niche, has not been filled on YouTube. I guess you will take on and hold this place, and money will surely follow it. Thank you. Yes. Hopefully so. I appreciate it. And I do. I love it. And that is something that isn't... I realize it's not done. I'll say I don't really put out my credentials all that much, but I do have a master's in social work, and it's from a pretty prestigious school. I'm not going to share... Well, I'm not going to share it because I don't want too much of my personal information out there. But I used to be very, very, very serious about this career path. Yeah, so kind of... Well, I'm excited to kind of be bringing it back and to like finding the combination of two, because I love geeking out about how emotions are expressed in music, and there's just not a lot of that information out there. There's a lot of basic stuff like minor keys are sad. Use a minor key with a slow tempo and you've got sad music, and that's cool. That's great. It's a starting point. But if you really want to get into like the details and the nuance and how to command it like an art form and not just kind of a little trick, that's what I really want to try and share with people. Let's see here. Tamashi, today's title should have been Q&A and oversharing. Yes. That'd probably be a good one. You know what? Maybe I'll change that. Q&A and oversharing. That's a good idea. I like that. Thank you, Aditya. Ravi, keep saying, dear, it's great to hear stories and thoughts. Thank you for sharing. Actually, you are a good storyteller. Thank you. Thank you. That actually means a lot to me, Ravi. You have no idea. Thank you. I really appreciate that. My greatest passion really is storytelling. That's why I'm into music. It's because music, for me, is my favorite way to tell stories. I grew up in a family of storytellers. All of my tias would share, my aunts would share stories of the family in Mexico and coming over to the country and building a home for us. All these stories that I love sharing and listening to. And then growing up, my mom would read stories to us in bedtime. So I love storytelling. And so I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me, Ravi. I appreciate it. Helios, smiley face, right back at you. SMZ, I copped IRS 2 for $10. Woo! It's well worth it, although I haven't been able to fully wrap my mind around spectral synthesis. That's good to know. I can spare $10, I think. So yeah, I'll look into that. Thank you, SMZ. Diversium, any tips on starting a YouTube channel about musical composition, etc., like an educational channel? Thinking about starting one for a long time now. My biggest tip, because I mean, I'm still figuring this out myself too. My biggest tip is if you're gonna do it because you enjoy it. All right, there is a lot of stress that goes into doing videos, and if you're going into it because you want to make money, I don't know, maybe you'll be better at it than me, but it's not a very profitable venture, not yet at least. So you have to do it because you love it. And that's why I do it. I do it because I love doing these streams. I love chatting with all of you guys. I love oversharing. I just kind of talking. Like my friends say, I like to hear myself talk. And I love writing music. It's just, for me, this is enjoyable. So that's why I do it. There is a lot of negativity that can get thrown your way, especially with something as close to people's hearts as music. Music and the arts in general are just very personal for people. And they spend a lot of their time thinking about it, practicing it, applying it, and living it. So when someone says something that clashes with their view of how things should be, that can evoke a very visceral response. When people have a view of something so special, so beloved by them as music, and someone else's view doesn't fit that, it can invoke a lot of strong emotions, and some people just aren't very good at regulating those strong emotions, and you can get some very mean, hurtful, and spiteful things sent your way. Fortunately, that doesn't bother me all that much. I tend to be an understanding person. I just kind of let it roll off my shoulders a bit. But if you're not prepared for that, I just want to give you a heads up, a friendly warning. People can be mean, but on the other side, people can also be incredibly grateful, wonderful, and beautifully kind people like all of you, and very supportive. So thank you, everybody. And so yeah, go for it. But I would say just do it because you're passionate about it. All right, do it because you enjoy it. That's the best thing. That's the best advice I can give. Everything else you can kind of pick up and learn. Matt Lewis, what was the iZotope plugin for removing noise? Oh, it's iZotope RX. Oh, thank you. I gotta turn that back on. RX voice noise. So I got the RX7 suite a few years ago, back when I had a student discount. And especially they're all kind of like noise fixing things. But yeah, that's the one that you can use. It's very helpful. Today, I mostly use it when I'm recording audio for videos. And then for when I do stuff like this where I have to record my own voice and create kind of these choir patches. And kind of make it sound a little cleaner. Because other things I also did is I had to do some compression to fix the volume to make it more uniform across each recording. The tuner is only on this one because I wanted to make sure that we weren't singing terribly out of tune. And you can see that's an A, which is what I wanted, a little flat, but that's fine. And there's different sounds, and that's so that was just initial to make sure that we weren't totally flat. But then I've got the EQ that you can watch, which gets rid of room tone. If this was off, you can see all of that kind of rumbling sound. So I get rid of that to get, again, a cleaner sound. And then what else did I do? I did... oh yeah, I used a stereo field panner to kind of create some space for each of these voices to kind of fan them out and make more of a choir effect. And yeah, that's it. Alright, you just hear my roommate and I singing. Let's see here. So yeah, those are the plugins and kind of the things I did. Yes, Diversium, thank you. It's yep, it's an RX. Oh, thank you. All of you guys are on top of that. Thank you. All right. We're like, what? We're well over an hour into this stream, and I have not done the one thing I was supposed to do. Oh, well, it's fine. I've got the rest of the week to finish this piece down here to get it working up, so that gives me a little more sense of relief. So, but let's kind of get back to it. Let's listen to these first two pieces again to kind of get back into the mood of writing music. And then if anyone has any questions, please throw them into the comments, because this is really fun. I'm enjoying this. Thank you. Got to stay hydrated. And then something I'll do while I'm listening to the music is take notes on a notepad of different ideas that come to me. And different things like, oh, I want to add this, or whatever. Because you always want to take note of your instinctive reactions. it sounds very Uematsu. I'm not sure who that is, but that's just the composer. But thank you, I appreciate it. I got the idea, like I said earlier, from the Gentle Criminal theme in My Hero Academia. The general vibe is kind of what inspired it. And Vadim, thank you. I really enjoy working at the accordion too. Awesome. So listening to that a couple times, I already got more notes, and that's why I always have a notebook on my table. I used to have a dry erase board, and I loved my dry erase board. But then I moved, and I lost my dry erase board, and I was very sad. Well, not very sad, but I guess you could say melancholy? No, that doesn't fit either. Either way, I was bummed. That's the word. Bummed. I was bummed, all right? Again, I love, because the background is a therapist, I love exploring different descriptions of emotions and how they kind of like give you, like, if you're able to name the emotion, it gives you autonomy over it. If you're able to tell the difference between frustration, anger, and rage, then you can understand, all right, I'm not angry, I'm frustrated. And that gives you a little level of control over that kind of thing. But so yeah, that just explains that kind of thing that I just went down about the different sadnesses. Oh yeah, so the things I noticed. First some comments. Very miss. I do like the. I love an accordion too. It's not an actual accordion, unfortunately. It's a synth made to sound like an accordion. I didn't have an accordion sound library, and the ones I found for free online didn't give me the level of control I wanted for it. But I like the sound. It works. But yes, that was the one thing I knew going into this piece is I wanted an accordion. All right, it just fit the vibe I was going for. That was the bit, like when I talk about being inspired by Gentle Criminal from My Hero Academia. That's what it was. Hearing the accordion worked, I was like, I need to use an accordion for this. Ravi, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the piece. I spent a lot of time on that one, and it's not done yet, but it's just functioning. I believe it was, who was it? It was, Jack. Jack of Nine of Hearts is one of like the subscribers and a student of mine. Made the comment about having craftsmanship versus artistry, and I think that was a Ryan Leach video discussing that, about the difference between focusing on the craft or like the functionality of something versus the artistry, and that's very much what I'm doing right now. Is I'm focusing on does it function before I start getting a little more artistic with it. Vadim and SMZ, awesome. So yeah, you guys got that cultural link to the accordion. I love that. Again, being half Mexican myself, the accordion is very prominent on a lot of the folk music in Mexico, so I grew up listening to it as well. My cousin owned an accordion. It was the coolest thing in the world. I wonder if he still got it, because he could play it pretty well. But I haven't spoken with him in a while. That's a bummer. I gotta reach out. Tamashi, did you see the prompt for January competition at Ryan Lee's channel? I have not. No, what's he doing? I love Ryan's channel. He's incredible. So I'm super happy to see his channel blow up because he deserves it. But what's he doing for the January competition? It's like a video game prompt or something. I'm not sure. I've heard of it. I just haven't seen it. Matt Lewis, piano chord progression is awesome. Thank you. As I'm saying, it's pretty convincing in the context. Yes, and that's the trick. And then Matt Lewis, the chord progression. I'm assuming you're talking about The Great Lion. If we look at the sketch, this one was actually gave me quite a bit of difficulty. But oh wait, no, yeah, this one didn't give me difficulty. Not at all. This is what this is. We actually came up with this on a live stream when I was working on it. So I think it was like the first one that I did where it's just like streaming while I work. Although in this video I'm not really working, am I? I'm just kind of hanging out with you guys. But that's okay. I'm enjoying it. I talked about how my favorite chord relationship, that's the accordion. I swear, how many times am I going to make that mistake? Piano. There we go. And then we'll open. My favorite chord combination is a minor chord. If Cubase will play it, is like a minor chord. If it will play, what's going on? To a major chord, like a perfect fourth away. So an A minor to a D major. And so what I did for this one is that didn't really give me the sound I wanted, but if I reversed it, D major to A minor, it created a very similar, these are called twins, or that's at least what I call them in CRs, are when you take two chords and you kind of like flip them. So now instead of going from an A minor to a major triad, that's a perfect fourth away, I'm going from a major triad to a minor triad, a perfect fifth away. Because a perfect fifth is the inversion of a perfect fourth, and instead of going minor to major, I'm going to major to minor. So it's flipping it. If you want to learn more about that, check out my blog post or my video on chord relationships and emotion. But yeah, so that's how I came up with that. And that essentially just repeats. It goes G major to A minor, and then D major again, and then E major over D. Although eventually that started causing some issues with the arrangement, so I switched it to just E major. There are a few moments where I leave that kind of dissonant crunch in there, but that's one of the things I need to rewrite the choir for. I mentioned that the choir uses this very dissonant sound, and unfortunately it clashes with the cello, because anytime you have two different timbres, in which case a choir versus the cello, those are very different timbres. Timbre is just the tone color, the sound. A choir has a very different sound from a cello. And when they're playing that note, that dissonant crunch, because they're different colors playing that crunch, the crunch gets heightened. It gets more dissonant and it sticks out even more. That's why when we have this part over here, where the cello comes in, there you might notice just a few moments where it's a little crunchy. Wow, sorry, that was bad spot to come in. Let's see. We can pull up a visualization. Right here. That right there. We have the low voices singing a D and the cello playing C sharp. That is a very dissonant interval, and it kind of just gets emphasized in a way that I don't like. So I need to rewrite the harmony part to kind of address that, because this is technically shouldn't be that dissonant. It's well, I guess it is dissonant. That's a dominant seventh chord. No, it's not. That's just a major seventh. And so it's not that dissonant, It's just when you flip it up in inversion. And on piano, it sounds great. I love that sound on piano. That's why I kept it. And then when I kind of put it out for choir and cello, I forgot that basic principle of dissonance, that when you have different tone colors playing different notes in a dissonant interval, it heightens that dissonance, which is how we get this. Which again, kind of works. So again, it kind of works, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I don't care much for it, so I'm just going to rewrite it. Let's see here. Awesome. So yeah, it looks like I caught up on you guys' comments. Oh, I really need to do at least some work, don't I? Although I'm just really enjoying just kind of vibing with all of you, just chatting. Let's see. So we're back at this. The third piece. A hint at the Game Maker motif. That nice, delicious, incremental complexity, adding one layer at a time, which keeps things very interesting. Then the melody comes in. And there's a couple cool things in here. In the script. Alright, so you'll notice the first section that I have plotted out needs to be low energy. Alright, and the main idea, I've got to reread this scene in the script because I'm blanking on the actual pacing, which I don't want to rely too much on the script because I have not been given an updated version of the script. The script has gone through several revisions since I was given a copy, and that's fine. I had a conversation with the writer and the director. We kind of had this decision. It's like, all right, do they want to keep me up to date on every script change there is? In which case, I'm probably going to be spending a lot of time rereading, restudying, kind of evaluating each script. Or do they want to trust me to have that I have an understanding of what emotions need to be delivered based off the original draft, and then just trust me to deliver, and then we can adjust once the final script is added. And we all kind of agreed that because of my own style and how neurotic I can be as a storyteller, and wanting to digest every script. If you guys have seen my playlists on my own approach to spotting films, you'll know how much time I spend before I start writing. I mean, look at this. All right, how many pages is this document? 46 pages. None of this is music, all right? I mean, some of it is. It's descriptions of music, but all this is like me breaking down. I mean, at this point, my notes are almost as long as the script. And that's because like I said earlier in the stream, I'm a storyteller at heart, and music is the way I tell stories. So I love to understand the stories I'm trying to tell with my music. So we decided I would get bogged down on the details too much, and because I'm a storyteller, they trust me to deliver what's needed. And then I can adjust once the final version is done. All that to say, really, yeah, I just went on that long rant just to say I need to reread the script, but I probably don't want to reread the script. I don't know. That probably could have been in less detail, but that's all right. That's who I am. I overshare, don't I? It's okay. I enjoy it. And you people apparently do too. Otherwise, you would just kind of log off the stream, wouldn't you? Or at least I can safely make that assumption, I hope. Okay, so there are basically three chunks of this, right? There's an initial spot where something's just not right. All right, so this is kind of a building tension. This is where the music comes in, and it needs to establish. And again, the piano's not working. That's like, what, the sixth time I've made that mistake? There we go. So there's like, I enter with that minor chord, and it kind of immediately, no, it's an E minor, isn't it? Kind of says right away that there's something uneasy. Then there's the A minor with E under it. And it kind of tells right away that there's just something not right. And all right, so in here I have a couple technical responsibilities. Basically, how am I going to be telling the music with this? What are my responsibilities? For this, I say that the music needs to stay in the background, which hence kind of the repetitive nature. Maybe a hint at the Game Maker's motif, which is that at the very beginning, because the Game Maker's theme we heard a very different version of it. Actually, that's something fun to take a look at. All right, so we have, if you remember this first piece, let's go back to it. We'll listen to the just part of it. But this is the same theme. All right, so this is the same thematic material. It just needs to be placed in a very different setting, a very different emotional setting. Right? Kind of a bouncier, lighter feeling. It's fun, but still not something that you can really trust entirely, alright? But it's still fun, right? It's still a little bouncy. It promises an entertaining game, alright? I mean, the villain is known as the Game Maker. So we've got that kind of quirky variation of it. And then, if we start here, we'll notice this is the same exact melodic idea, the same exact musical idea, just in a very different emotional setting. Same idea. A little less syncopated, a little less bouncy, a little less kind of personality, and a lot darker. So yeah, that's just kind of a little fun thing. So those are the responsibilities of this piece. Then after this, like I said, this particular piece is written into the script. So I have, so if you couldn't tell from the earlier piece, the Great Lion, there's going to be some lion imagery in this story that's very important. And it's used in a couple different ways, all right? It's used at moments where it's a very majestic thing, and then there are versions where it kind of gets bastardized and used as this very menacing, dangerous thing. And that's kind of what this is going to be. There are going to be moments where it needs to be kind of build the energy much higher than I have already. It needs to get to kind of a climactic point while still remaining in the background. That's going to be very difficult. But it needs to create a sense of danger and a sense of like building chaos. All right, and so there are moments in the script where there is mentioned specifically that you hear a lion's roar in the music. So I'm going to have to do some searches on YouTube, find some different recordings of lion roars that I want to work with, and it'll be fun. But all of this to say, like, yeah, I'm probably going to have to do this another time when I'm not streaming. End the entire piece abruptly, but make sure there's enough delay or reverb to give it a bit of a tail. All right, so I want it to end suddenly, but I don't want it to feel unnaturally sudden. And so, great way to add. I have a lot of reverb used throughout this, different pieces. In particular, well, mostly just the Great Lion. So if we hear my piano, where is it? Acoustic piano. You hear when the note dies out, you still hear that tail. And if we bring up, oops, wrong button. If we can look at this oscillator, whatever it's called. Oscilloscope is what it is. You notice how those frequencies remain. Especially if we look at the oscilloscope for my reverb. Alright, what happened? There we go. And of course, where is it? Can I not do it? Alright, for some reason it won't let me show both, unfortunately. But you'll notice at least on here, you'll see the kind of the sound. Alright, almost done. It's frustrating. Watch this little black bar here. You'll see how there's still sound coming out. It's still coming. It's lowering volume. But if we go up here on the piano, you'll see it dies much quicker. Apparently not. Maybe not. I don't know. I do have reverb on that piano directly as well. I don't know. My brain is getting cooked. It gets so unreasonably warm in this room. when I don't have my windows or fans on. But I can't have the windows open or the fans on in January. It's not even December anymore. It's January. I've got like a thermometer somewhere in this room just because for fun I clocked the temperature in this room versus the temperature in the common living space versus the space like in the basement. And there's a 15-degree difference between this room and the living space on a bad day. Probably because I've got so much foam paneling, and it's a very secluded. It's a very tiny room inside the middle of the house, so there's not really that many. Most of the walls are surrounded by other rooms instead of the outside. So middle of January, I still have to keep my window down. In Michigan, nonetheless. More questions. Let's see here. So I'm probably going to get off in a bit, just because I'm starting to sweat and I need to take a break. Robbie, good question. What kind of music do I listen to? Oh, all kinds. A lot of instrumental music. I absolutely adore Studio Ghibli and Attack on Titan. Very different genres. Very different sounds, but I love them both tremendously. Lots of Hans Zimmer, lots of John Williams. I also listen to a lot of songs as well. So it'll range anywhere from like Screamo to Disney to swinger music from like swinger jazz. Recently, like the past year or so, one of my all-time favorite two artists. Okay, right off the bat, right? If you once after this stream, look up these two artists. All right, incredible singers. All right, first Divide Music. I will plug that man's channel any day of the week. He makes up the vast majority of my workout playlist. I like I said a couple of I was a strength coach to make a living. So after grad school, I worked as a strength coach through grad school as well as a teacher to pay for grad school. Then after grad school, I continued working as a strength coach, just kind of pay my bills before finally committing to music full time and leaving that job behind. So I still like to train myself. I still like to work out. I'm more into powerlifting than bodybuilding, meaning I'm not going to be cutting down and being super aesthetic, but I can move some heavy weights, and that's what I love to do. And so Divide makes up the vast majority of my workout playlist, and I'm realizing I'm oversharing again, but that's okay. Divide, incredible music. He does something called nerdcore, which means he takes characters that inspire music. They're not parodies. It's actual like original music that was inspired by characters from different anime, video games, movies, etc. And I was never really into this genre. It just never kind of stuck to me until there was One Piece. Next in Line is one of my favorite pieces. He did that Next in Line, which is based off Endeavor from My Hero Academia. And what is it? He does one based on Madara Uchiha from Naruto. I'm going to look this up because I can't believe I'm forgetting. I have so many, all right? I literally have a playlist dedicated to just his music. So check him out. He's incredible. Let me know what your favorite songs of his are if you do end up that you liking him. Let him know that I sent you, too. So put it in the comments. He's got a significantly larger channel than mine, but it'd be really cool if he just kind of acknowledged my existence. I'd fanboy pretty hard. I'm fanboying as it is, so I'm going to stop. Another one who I could fanboy just as much over, and who I've actually had the supreme pleasure of seeing live a couple times, is the musician Noah Guthrie. All right? Incredible singer, unique voice. I first discovered him years ago, like early 2000s. He had a cover that went viral of Sexy and I Know It. But he made it. Look it up. Noah Guthrie, Sexy and I Know It acoustic cover. It's incredible. It well deserved all the hype. And since then, I've been a diehard fan. I've seen him in concert a couple times. His original music is incredible. What is it? He's got his latest album, The Blue Wall, is incredible. So check that out. Again, I'm going to try and keep from fanboying too much because that's not what the stream's supposed to be about. But yeah, so fantastic question. Thank you. I listen to all kinds of music, but those are the two guys I'm fanboying over at the moment. Like the two singers, the two musicians that I listen to the most. In terms of songwriters. In terms of instrumental music, I'm all over the place. Music, like movies, films, TV shows, video games, classical repertoire, concert music repertoire that's not necessarily classic. My favorite, like established, I guess you would call them concert composers, would be, of course, Tchaikovsky and Shostakovich are two of my all-time favorites. And Debussy. Debussy is amazing. and Bach. You know, I have too many musicians that I like. I could go on for this for an unreasonable amount of time, as I can with most topics, it turns out. Let's see here. Dan, any exercises you recommend for training recognizing chords and chord progressions by ear? Sure. The biggest one for recognizing that is you want to work with solfege. Okay, so that the solfege is like the whole like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Like do. Of course, my piano's not working again. That's like the 7th time I've done that. So if you got this, like you go your first note in a major key. Key is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, sol. Yeah. So yeah. If you can get that down pat, sing the solfege and memorize it like a song. All right? So memorize it. So if you've got like reasonable pitch where you can sing a song relatively accurately, try to memorize that scale as a song, as lyrics. Practice it at least 5 minutes every day. All right? If you can do that, then once you've done that, start practicing the intervals. So do, re, mi, do, mi, do, re, mi, fa, do, fa. And kind of like continue that going through. You'll be amazed how quickly your ear picks it up. And you can start singing that without the keyboard. And that's where you start to do set singing. When I auditioned for music school, part of it was because my instrument in school was the voice. I unfortunately have not kept up with it, but I was at one point able to sight sing. All right, I could see sheet music I'd never seen before, and using solfege, recognize, all right, what key is this piece in? What is do? Give myself a starting pitch for do, and then I could sing the thing through. So yeah, solfege will be your best friend, especially a type of solfege called movable do, which means whatever major scale you start with, the first note is do. It doesn't matter what pitch it is. So C major, C is do. In D major, D is do. And kind of practice that moving up and down to different scales. You'll be amazed at how effective that helps and how quickly it works. SMC, the less bouncy version is much more sinister. Yes, right? Yes. It's definitely meant to be more sinister. Where the this other version that I need to start arranging and taking outside of just piano, it's not supposed to be sinister so much as just outwardly dangerous, menacing. The idea that sinister has like something under the surface. All right, at least my understanding is like sinister is something like it's below the danger, and the malintent is under the surface. They're not trying to reveal it just yet. Whereas I want this to be more of an outward danger of something's like, all right, we need to get out of here kind of thing. And it will sound significantly more dangerous once I've actually arranged it and finished the composition. SMZ, Madara, and Itachi were my favorite Naruto characters. I'll check out Divide after this. Definitely. Madara's piece, incredible. When it first came out, I listened to it. Now, he does kind of a lot of like heavy metal type music, so it might take some getting used to, but if you're not familiar with that genre, but the music is incredible, fantastic. Check him out again. Tremendous. He's on YouTube, Spotify, all kinds of stuff. And also, I didn't catch up with the names of the artists you mentioned. Yes, it was, and SMZ. The first was Divide Music. I couldn't remember the other one. The other one was Noah Guthrie. I will put that in the comments because I love his music so much that I want to share it with all of you. So, Divide Music and Noah Guthrie. 2 tremendous musicians. I love their music very dearly, so check them out. Let's see. It all thanks so awesome taking notes. Thank you. And SMD, do you use La minor or Do minor with solfege? I started with it La based, but I'm considering Do based for a better connection with modes. That's depends. For me, what I would do is I never really did a lot of study for minor scales. I would just, so I guess you would say I do La focused for minor. I'd say, all right, so key of A minor. Again, the piano. Why can I not learn? All right, so the A minor. All right, that has all the same notes as C major, just a different order. So if I was working with a minor key, I would say, all right, well, what's the relative major? That's C major. So I would say C. C is do, and I'm just going to sing it like I would if it was written in C major, not A minor. So anytime I see a C, I'd say, that's C. Anytime I see an A, that's a La. So that's how I would do. So yeah, I would do La Center because I do find it helps a lot with having a better relationship. For sight singing, at least. For me, that's what worked. It's on a personal basis. Yeah, so that's all caught up. Oh, man. We really went like 2 hours without me actually doing any real work, didn't we? I really should change the name with QA and oversharing. I still like that, Robbie. That still makes me laugh. So thank you. So let's listen to this one more time. I'm going to listen to all of these one more time, just to kind of get them fresh on my mind again. A chance to take more notes, because the last time we listened to them, I took a couple notes. This first one, I realized I need to make the accordion, even though I love it, it's a little stale at times. In particular, the louder note, like the long notes. So I want to automate some of the volume to give it a bit more expressivity. So remember, expression in music comes from the way you manipulate pitch, volume, and timbre while holding a single note. That's where the term expressivity comes from. So, like on the bass, or we'll say cello, you can take a note, and you can get quieter. And that impacts the expressivity. So you can have... I mean, that's kind of just a stupid little phrase, but you can see how adding those changes gives it a little bit more personality than not having them and just playing everything at the same volume. So that's what I want to do for the accordion. I don't know if an accordion can physically do that in real life. But for me, it doesn't matter because I'm not using an accordion. I'm using a synth, and my focus is more about expressivity. So that goes back to that question that Cody asked earlier. Are these supposed to be real players or computer parts, and how does that impact the way I write for them? On the accordion, this is a synth, and I don't intend to have it played by a real person, so I don't have to look it up. I'm going to say, this is what I want for the sound, I'm going to make this change. But for the... if I wanted this to be played by a real person, I'd have to do research. I'd say, whoa, can an accordion change its volume while sustaining a single note? If so, then good, I can add this already. If not, then I can't. I'm going to have to find something else to get the effect I want. I've got notes like that for different things I want to make, so I'm going to listen to these one more time, take some notes so I can at least say I did something productive. And while we're listening, you guys can throw in whatever comments you have, whatever is in the comment section by the time I'm done listening to these first two pieces, and maybe the third. I'll address those, but then after that, we're probably going to head out. Let's see. You do it the same way. Awesome, right? Yeah, I just find it helpful that way for, like, solfege. But let's listen. And again, the bass is the most important instrument in terms of me writing realistically, because I really want to get an actual bass player to record all the bites. I want them to record the parts, and then maybe even do a bit of thank you, Valeria Scores Music, like my post on Instagram. Maybe do some improvisation in the recording session as well. Strategy for making dynamic bass lines, I have a video about that in my playlist Harmony for Composers. Why is because I messed with the modulation. First one, didn't really have too many notes. I wasn't paying attention enough for notes, unfortunately. Let's see if I can get some more on this one. If anyone else has ideas, let me know. If you catch something that you think I should do, Put it in the comments. I'd love to hear your ideas. Quinn, good idea with the vibrato. I actually tried that, and I'll explain my lack of success in a moment. So thank you. Alright, so Quinn, you mentioned that I should try adding vibrato to those longer notes, and I tried. Admittedly, I tried for like 10 minutes before this stream started, so I'm not done trying, but that is something I want to do. The problem is, since it's a synth, I have to artificially create the vibrato. In Massive, there's this ID under the oscillator file that allows me to add vibrato. Unfortunately, these controls just aren't working well because I didn't design this particular synth. This is a preset, and I have no idea what these are routed to. I think it's this down here. But even playing around with these knobs, I notice it doesn't have that strong of an impact on the vibrato. So the next point, this stepper is not being used for anything. So I tried turning it into an LFO, giving it a simple kind of sine wave shape. All this means is that it moves a parameter I want in this kind of shape. So I took this, I detached the 6 here, and replaced it with an 8, and basically I took the pitch. Because when you're doing vibrato, it's a slight up and down in the pitch. I added an LFO. It worked, but then it also created this terrible kind of clipping noise at the end when I would stop using vibrato. So, you know what, that clipping noise, it was probably the reverb. It was probably the echo of the reverb catching the vibrato stopping. So what if I just turned off? I don't know. It's on my to-do is what I'm saying. It's like I do want to do vibrato, and I want to have some control over the volume as well. It's because vibrato is, I talked about controlling pitch, timbre, and volume over a single note. The way you do that for pitch most commonly, I mean there's lots of ways, but is vibrato. If you think about vibrato on a string, you're pushing the string back and forth, which tightens it and loosens it, which raises and lowers the pitch slightly. And that's how you get vibrato. And singing, it's the same thing. So when la, you go la, you know, up and down. It's an exaggerated version. But you add movement in the pitch. And so that's what I'm trying to do. But I've just run into technical difficulties since it's a synthesizer and not a sample. But I'm working on it. But great idea. Good, smart minds think alike, right, Quinn? So thank you. Ravi, your Harmony and Melody for Composure series was the best. I learned a lot from that. Thank you. That means a lot to me. I'm really glad. Those are some of my favorite playlists I've put out, just because they're very personal in terms of my own approach. So I'm glad you like them. Can you do extended version of that series with one topic at a time and like 10-minute videos? I guess that will work well. Interesting idea. So, what do you mean, like an extended version of that series? Oh, and thank you, Quinn. Thanks. Yeah, I'm not sure I'll figure it out too. It just takes a little bit of time. So Robbie, yeah, I wouldn't be against it. Say, it won't be for a while. I'll say that much at least. Unfortunately, like I said, I just don't have time to work on edited videos anymore since all my time is spent working on the soundtrack. Except for these past 2 hours where I was supposed to be working on the soundtrack and I just talked with all of you lovely people. Let's see. Have you used any of the synthetic synthesizers inside of Cubase? I have not. And I have a tragic reason why. I deleted all of the Cubase synthesizer plugins from my computer. Because going back to the idea of being a struggling artist, where did I pull this up? And not having much money, my computer is in desperate need. Oh, that's worse than I thought. You ever look something up to show how bad it is, and then it turns out it got worse? I feel like every time I look at my bank account. But for right now, this is how much space I have on my hard drive. I have an external hard drive to try and manage that, but you see, even that is quite limited. And a lot of this is important software. Like, over half of this is my sound libraries. So I can't just delete my sound libraries, and I can't move them onto an external hard drive. So all this to say, I deleted those plugins a long time ago, just trying to save little scraps of space wherever I can. That's also why I unfortunately have no more video games on this computer anymore. But it works. I've got a lot of great synthesizers I'm familiar with, but Cubase has amazing plugins, so I'm sure their synthesizers are great. Patchop's pretty good. Granular synthesis, that'd be cool. I'm familiar with granular synthesis a little bit, but I haven't had a lot of experience with it just yet. But yeah, that'd be really cool. I would like to someday. I want to upgrade Cubase, and get the newest version, and I imagine they've got some incredible plugins that I can play with then. But that's a little bit in the future. For now, I am more than happy with Cubase 9.5 Pro. That one, I've had it since the beginning. It works very well for me. SMZ, you could automate the LFO amount and play with how fast you introduce it, write it out. That's what I did. That's what I did. I had it set, so like I was saying with the LFO amount, I had the LFO amount set to 8 because I don't need the release. I don't need to create variability in the release on this synth. So I got rid of this and I switched it to vibrato, controlling the LFO rate. Although I didn't try the LFO amount. You know, that probably just fixed it. Thank you, SMZ. I'll try that. The LFO amount. So for those of you who don't know, an LFO in synthesizers is used to create a repeating pattern, repeating movement. So essentially what this shape says is if I attach it, say, to... So if you notice this one over here, this pitch. In fact, I'm going to open a different one because I don't want to mess anything up. So what I say is this little green line and this gray line. All right, so 6... The LFO has this shape. So basically, this starting point is where the line points. When it moves up here, it goes to the far extreme of the green. When it's down here, it moves to the far extreme of the left. The idea of this kind of sloping movement is it's gradual. The movement is kind of moving the knob back and forth. So whatever I have this applied to is adding some change. So if I hold this note down, it's basically moving my filter back and forth. So it does that kind of cool effect. So it adds motion, a repeating pattern. Now with an LFO, there are there's several different parameters, but two basic ones are LFO rate and LFO amount. The LFO amount is how far does this pattern move. The LFO rate is how fast it moves. I attach it to the rate to kind of have the vibrato move faster, 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 but I didn't attach it to the amount, so it might be worth automating both of them and seeing how that impacts. But yeah, thank you, SMC. That's a great idea. I'll try that. But for now, I am getting quite warm in this terribly hot room, and I need to go for a walk. I need to stretch my legs a bit. So I'm going to end the stream here. Last little soapbox thing. If you want to support the channel, if you want to feed a starving artist, check out my merch. Check out my books on my website. I've got all kinds of really cool stuff out there. If you're interested in learning more about emotions in music and you haven't purchased any of my books, I have a book about it, as well as characters in music and story worlds in music, available as both an audiobook and an ebook on my website. I also have an ebook about writing, creating more realistic mock-ups in a DAW. I've got all kinds of cool stuff. You can also sign up for private lessons, all of the links for which are in the description of this video. I appreciate each and every one of you. This has been a really fun stream for me. It's been fun connecting with you guys and talking. I hope you all have a wonderful day, a wonderful start to this new year we're in. It's a fresh start filled with opportunities. So keep studying, keep working hard, and keep writing new music, my friends. I will see you all in the next stream on Thursday. Have a great day. Bye-bye.